physics experiment setup where we again have a rack with all the apparatus, and clicking on those apparatus button will make the apparatus pop on the table that has been attached to the rack. Later on, you can place each of these apparatus on the experiment table and conduct your experiments. So this experiment is class 12, experiment number 1, that is to find the resistance of a given wire and calculate the current versus voltage graph. So as you can see, each and every apparatus has been laid out onto the experiment table, and the 3D models that you are seeing now is just behaves like the one that you will be using in your schools or colleges. So the 3D models included in the LabXR project are very detailed, and we have tried to match up to the genuinity level as much as possible. So once all the apparatus are being laid out, we then test whether it's working by switching it on. So there are buttons that are present to each and every apparatus over there, just like you see in your real world physics lab. And later on, you can also place these apparatus as and when required or wherever required. You can also use the rheostat just like you use it in the real world. You can slide it and change the resistance values. You can see the values being constantly changing as and when we slide. The lab setup that you are observing now is a chemistry lab setup where you have all the apparatus that are required, which are being laid on the rack. As and when you click on the apparatus button, the apparatus pop up right on the table that is present beside the rack. Later you can place these apparatus on the main experiment setup table and start conducting your experiment. So the experiment which we are displaying now is a simple chromatography experiment where you observe the color changes in the chromatography paper due to the pigmentations in the solution. So as and when you dip the paper into the solution, you see a timer being popping up where it indicates the time that is being required for the color changing to happen. So once the timer is off, you can see the color being changed there. This is the conclusion of this particular experiment. The readings are to be taken by the user and he can adjust those values. Now moving on to the biology experiment setup that you are seeing now. We have the procedure table and 3 buttons which helps to manipulate the flower 3D model that you are seeing on the screen. So you can scale it, zoom it and even rotate it. And the second button helps you to give the hints. So hints are basically you are taking each and every part of this flower and placing it separately according to the labelings. So these hints helps you to just know where exactly those parts should be placed. Here we are disassembling the flower, hibiscus flower, and laying out the petals accordingly with respect to the hints that are being popping up on the screen. So mainly this experiment helps the user or the student to get a very detailed view of the entire flower and different parts that are present in the flower. So once each and every part has been disassembled, it has been placed over the hint section where it snaps right to the hint structure. So right now the corolla part is completely disassembled. Now we'll move on to the next by pressing the hint button again to see exactly where the 3D model or the part of the flower must be placed. As you can see, the hint gives you a very brief idea on which part you have to place over the labeled positions. Similarly, this is conducted and repeated for each and every part. So this is the pistil part. As you can see, we are done with the most or the promising big parts of the flowers. But moving on, we also have some smaller parts that require keen attention. So we separate those smaller parts, that is the anther and the filament, separately and place them over the labelings. So once that is done, it is hard for a user to understand what exactly is inside those anthers and filaments. So we are using magnifying glass to take a closer look on the components that are present inside these. So you can see another structure popping up where you have the labelings whenever you touch over the part.